Hi, this is Jeanne Jennings, and I'm here with Jonathan Rick, social media expert extraordinaire, and also a personal friend of mine. So I thought we would talk a little bit about a deck that he sent me earlier that talks about social media. So first of all, Jonathan, how are you tonight?
Fantastic. I am not enjoying the weather, but I guess it's December, almost Christmas, so that's why I live in DC.
It is what it is, and DC is not so bad considering.
No, it's, I went to school in upstate New York, so this is probably like summer weather.
It's not so bad.
Yes.
So I looked at your deck that you sent over for me to view, and it was really interesting. But what's interesting to me was the idea of there was this sort of focus on look at the numbers, but kind of don't look at the numbers. Can you talk to me a little bit about that with regard to social media?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. So with social media, there's a tendency when trying to explain the ROI of what you're doing, sort of prove or justify your existence to your boss or your boss's boss or your client or your board of directors, to take the easy way out. Which is to say, the boss says, hey, what are we doing on social media? And you run to Facebook and click auto export and produce this fancy looking chart with a lot of big numbers that upon, or after first blush looks actually meaningless. We got 10,000 impressions and 36,000 views and 3,600 click-throughs. I don't know what that means.
Okay, fair enough.
And those are all important in some context. They're especially important to people who sell ads. They want to tell you that they're going to sell you, 16 million hits.
Or impressions.
Per month.
Yeah.
I tend to think that those are big, ambiguous numbers that intimidate because they're large. They don't actually tell you something. By contrast, I think the most effective way to sell and explain social media is to tell a story.
And I like this idea. It's hard for me though, because I'm very much a numbers girl, as you probably know. So I'm curious about this idea of a story, because I don't disagree, but talk to me more about the story.
Sure. So it's not an either or, it's an and.
Okay, I like that. That's easier for me to take.
Sure, yeah, there's often a tendency to conflate story or confuse stories with an anti-numbers perspective. And I'm not anti-numbers. What I'm saying is that what I'm questioning is which you give primacy. So do you lead with the story and then flush it out with numbers, or do you lead with numbers and then flush them out with a story?
Okay.
And what I tend to think is more compelling is to say, hey, this guy named Barack Obama, you may have heard of him. He's the president of the United States. He's the fourth.
I live about a mile from him, so I know who he is. Yes.
Small guy, yeah. I think he lives at
Small World,
Pennsylvania Avenue.
Somewhere there, yeah.
Okay. So Barack Obama has 40 million Twitter followers.
Okay.
Fourth most popular in the world. Those are our numbers. Now, on one hand, I could tell you, well, we got retweeted by an account with 40 million followers. I guess you sort of have to trust me that that's good and important.
Sure, because doesn't sound bad.
Doesn't sound good, but there's no context. I don't have anything to compare it to. There's no. How many does McCain have, or Romney, or Hillary? On the other hand, I could tell you.
Or Justin Bieber.
Or Justin Bieber. Yeah, exactly. He put us all to shame. Exactly.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Which is a whole other story, but go ahead.
Yeah. So on the other hand, I could tell you that the President of the United States retweeted our news release.
Okay.
And that to me is sort of full stop. That's QED. That communicates instantly that this is an important feat. I'm not just sort of bullshitting you with numbers.
So it's kind of the idea of the weighted average. So some people that retweet or follow are worth more than others, which makes totally sense to me, because if you're going for a target audience, they're obviously worth more to you than people who aren't in your target audience.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, if, some account that follows me has 16,000 followers, but they're all spam because it's, built and created by some bot in India. This is actually the problem that Newt Gingrich had, actually, when he was running for president. After he bowed out of the campaign, I think there was a Huffington Post expose that revealed that at least half of his followers were fake or spam-driven.
Oh, that's bad.
So, to me, numbers are important. They have a context. It's nice to say Newt Gingrich has 13 million followers, but I'd rather focus on quality and say, well, he was retweeted by the head of the American Enterprise Institute. I tell a story rather than voice the number down your throat.
So I totally agree with that. So as someone who's looking at social media and you're trying to justify social media to your higher ups, how do you recommend, do you have any tips for how they can get to kind of that, getting past the numbers into the story to really show the value of what they're doing?
Precisely. So here's an interesting story. We put out for one of my clients. We put out a catchy quote. We called it a quote of the day about the debt ceiling and how passing the debt ceiling or allowing the debt ceiling, to rise was like passing a kidney stone. Sooner or later, you're going to have to do it.
Ouch.
So why not get it over with sooner?
Right.
Fantastic quote, very tweetable. Unfortunately, by conventional metrics, it was a dud. Got, let's say 12 retweets and, I don't know.
Wow, that's really not, by conventional metrics, not so good.
Precisely. But then when we dug a little deeper into the metrics and we actually saw who retweeted the release, we saw that there were 2 people whose names sounded suspiciously familiar.
Okay.
One was the director of rapid response at the White House, and another was an assistant press secretary.
Oh, wow.
So to me, if we're able to say, politics...
It's not quantity, it's quality.
Precisely. If we're able to say that 2 people across the street working in the OEOB or the White House agreed with the message we're putting out, even though on all other issues we're at loggerheads, politics after all makes strange bedfellows, that to me is more compelling than saying this got 12 retweets and 16 favorites. And I'm just making up numbers. But so I'd rather tell a story. At the same time, you want to, build in some metrics, and so, you don't want to completely dismiss them, but the stories get primacy.
No, it makes a lot of sense. So you are my friend, so I get to talk to you all the time, which is awesome. But if the people watching want to kind of follow you and learn more about this, is there someplace that they can go?
Yeah, actually, it's a very difficult and unoriginal website. It's my name. It's JonathanRick.com, and I'm on Twitter, of course, as JRick. You can certainly find anything I've written. I have a lot of presentations on SlideShare, a lot of extremely boring cat pics on Twitter. And actually, I'll put it to you this way. This is a byline that I used a while ago. If you think what I had to say was mildly interesting, please follow me on Twitter, friend me on Facebook, and ignore me on Google+.
Fair enough. So on Twitter, you are JRick.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And thank you very much for talking to me tonight. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Jeanne.
And I follow you, and I will continue to follow you. And I think some of the folks watching will as well.
Fantastic.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Time.
My pleasure. Thank you.